The world does not work the way we were taught. There is an invisible layer in human relationships where victory does not belong to those who speak better or react faster, but to those who understand the game before others even realize it is being played. This layer is neither comfortable nor gentle, but it is real, and ignoring it carries a silent cost. There are people who enter a room without raising their voice and still change the entire dynamic around them. They do not argue, they do not explain themselves, they do not compete for attention. Even so, they are felt, not through charisma, but through something deeper: inner control, precise perception, and emotional mastery. Niccolò Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. He was not interested in idealized virtues, but in how power truly operates when no one is watching. For him, the most common mistake was not a lack of intelligence, but the naivete of believing that the world rewards good intentions alone. Machiavelli knew that those who react too much expose themselves. Those who explain themselves too much weaken themselves, and those who depend on approval become predictable. And predictability, in any system of power, is an exploitable weakness. Not because people are evil, but because they follow patterns when they feel too secure. If you have always felt that something is wrong with the way everyone seems to react, argue, and justify themselves all the time, this video is not a coincidence. This is not about becoming cold or cruel, but about abandoning the emotional naivete that keeps intelligent people trapped in fragile positions. Here, we will not speak of empty manipulation or explicit domination. We will speak of lucidity, of presence, of an intelligence that does not announce itself, but is felt. An intelligence that observes before acting, chooses silence when everyone expects noise, and understands that real power rarely needs to be displayed. What you are about to hear was not made to please, but to awaken. It is not a manual for attacks, but a map for mental and strategic protection. Because, as Machiavelli understood, those who do not understand the game inevitably end up playing in favor of those who do. Throughout this video, you will realize that being dangerously intelligent does not mean controlling others, but refusing to be controlled. And this shift begins at the most uncomfortable point of all: stopping reaction, learning to observe, and assuming the silent mastery of your own mind. Most people believe that intelligence means responding quickly, arguing better, justifying every move, and constantly proving they are right. This impulse feels natural, almost automatic, but this is exactly where the mistake begins to form. Those who react to everything do not act from themselves. They act from the stimulus of others, surrendering control of their own rhythm without realizing it. Whenever someone provokes you and you respond on impulse, something silent happens, the dynamic shifts. You stop leading and start being led. Immediate reaction may look like strength, but it is almost always just reflex. And reflexes are not decisions, they are conditioned responses that reveal more than they conceal. Over-explaining is another classic sign of this mistake. When you feel the need to justify every action, every choice, every silence, you send an involuntary message of insecurity. Not because you are wrong, but because someone who is grounded feels no urgency to convince. The rush to be understood almost always comes from the fear of being misunderstood. Niccolò Machiavelli understood this dynamic with uncomfortable clarity. For him, a being who acts dominated by emotion becomes predictable. And predictability, in the game of power, is weakness. Not because feeling is a problem, but because allowing emotion to decide the move turns anyone into an easily readable piece. The mistake, therefore, is not in emotion itself. It is in allowing it to take the wheel. When anger speaks before analysis, when pride responds before strategy, when fear decides before observation, the result is almost always the same. You react quickly, but you lose time, lose position, and lose advantage. This is where the first rupture of the dangerously intelligent is born. He does not try to eliminate emotions. He learns not to obey them automatically. Instead of reacting, he pauses. Instead of responding, he observes. This small interval between stimulus and action is where control begins to be rebuilt. Stopping automatic reactions does not mean becoming passive. It means becoming selective. You choose when to speak, when to act, and most importantly, when to do nothing. And this choice changes everything, because the world is accustomed to quick responses, not to sustained silence. Silence, in this context, is not absence, it is concentrated presence. When you do not react as expected, you break the interaction pattern. The other person loses their reference, begins to adjust, to over-explain, to reveal themselves. Without saying a word, you shift the axis of the conversation into your territory. Reacting all the time is living inside someone else's script. It is allowing every provocation to determine your next move. The dangerously intelligent understands that whoever defines the rhythm defines the game, and the rhythm never belongs to those who respond impulsively, but to those who know how to wait. This shift is more unsettling than direct confrontation. People expect emotional reactions, heated defenses, long justifications. When they encounter someone who observes in silence, they feel discomfort. They do not know whether they pleased you, failed, or were understood, and this uncertainty weakens any attempt at control. It is at this point that an uncomfortable truth begins to assert itself. Those who react too quickly usually react too late to perceive the intention behind the words, too late to choose the best response, too late to maintain the advantage that could have been preserved with a single moment of observation. When you interrupt the habit of reacting to everything, something internal begins to reorganize itself. Your mind slows down, your perception expands, and patterns that were once invisible begin to emerge with uncomfortable clarity. And it is precisely in this newly created space that observation ceases to be passivity and begins to become a silent weapon. When you stop reacting automatically, something begins to rearrange itself internally. It is not immediate nor spectacular, but it is profound. The noise diminishes, the need to respond dissolves, and in this newly created space, your attention shifts outward and begins to rest on others' behavior with a clarity that did not exist before. You begin to notice subtle patterns that were always there but went unnoticed. You see who talks too much to be accepted, who explains themselves without being accused, who raises their voice not out of conviction but to mask insecurity. The world, which once seemed chaotic, starts to reveal a silent logic behind human interactions. At this stage, emotion ceases to be an enemy and becomes data. Anger no longer demands release, it demands interpretation. Fear no longer requires escape, it requires reading. Discomfort no longer needs to be avoided because it now points to something important. Everything that once disorganized your mind begins to offer strategic information. Machiavelli was never deceived by appearances. He did not observe only what people said, but how they said it. When they spoke too much, when they fell silent, when they smiled at the wrong moment or insisted on proving something unnecessarily. For him, behavior always revealed more than any well-rehearsed speech. By adopting this posture, your presence begins to change without conscious effort. You speak less, listen more, and choose precisely when to intervene. Not because you lost your voice, but because you understood the value of timing and moment. Each word begins to carry weight, precisely because it is no longer wasted. Silence, at this point, becomes an active instrument. It creates tension, it shifts expectations, it forces the other to fill the space with explanations, justifications, or involuntary confessions. People who do not understand themselves feel great discomfort in the presence of someone who does not react as expected. While many confuse silence with weakness, you perceive the opposite. Those who can endure silence usually control the situation. Those who need to fill it are almost always trying to relieve their own anxiety. And this difference creates an invisible yet decisive advantage in any interaction. You do not become cold, you become lucid. Lucidity is born when emotion is observed, not obeyed, when impulse is recognized but not executed. This internal mastery subtly yet perceptibly alters your external posture, and people begin to respond to you differently. Without realizing it, others begin to expose themselves. They speak too much, reveal intentions, slip into contradictions, not because you pressured them, but because your silence destabilized them. The absence of reaction creates an uncomfortable mirror in which many end up revealing themselves. This is a decisive point in the transformation. You stop seeing people merely as individuals and begin to notice recurring behavioral patterns. You recognize insecurity disguised as arrogance, need hidden behind irony, and ambition masked as kindness. None of this requires confrontation, only attention. Constant observation makes your mind operate a few seconds ahead. While others are still reacting, you have already understood. While they argue, you have already decided. This difference in timing, almost imperceptible, is what separates those who defend themselves from those who position themselves with advantage. Machiavelli understood that true power rarely announces itself. It manifests in the ability to read the environment before movements become visible. Those who observe more than they speak are rarely caught by surprise because they have already perceived what was forming long before the outcome. This silent turn does not draw immediate attention, but it profoundly alters the way you exist in environments. Your presence becomes more contained, more calculated, and paradoxically more impactful. People sense that something has changed, even if they cannot pinpoint exactly what. Over time, observation ceases to be merely a habit and begins to demand structure. Because seeing is not enough. Presence must be sustained, words must be used with precision, and above all, you must not depend emotionally on any external reaction. It is at this point that intelligence ceases to be mere perception and begins to transform into method. After observation comes structure. Dangerously effective intelligence is not born from chaos, but from method. Machiavelli never admired impulsiveness disguised as courage. For him, true power resided in the ability to sustain a stable posture, while others lost themselves in emotional excess and predictable reactions. The first skill is controlled presence. You do not enter an environment trying to impose yourself, convince others, or prove your value. Your posture does not ask for space, it occupies it. There is a clear difference between those who demand attention and those who receive it naturally, effortlessly, simply by being aligned with themselves. Controlled presence is not empty silence, it is internal coherence. Your body, your gaze, and your posture communicate before any word is spoken. Machiavelli understood that those who need to announce power have already lost it, because true control is felt before it is understood. When you master this skill, something curious happens. People begin to observe you more carefully. They measure their words, adjust their behavior, and recalculate their movements. Not out of explicit fear, but out of intuition. They sense that there is something there that does not easily reveal itself. The second skill is strategic speech. While most people speak to win arguments or relieve emotions, you speak to direct thoughts. Every word has a function, every pause has intention. You ask more than you assert, allowing the other person to build their own conclusions without realizing it. Machiavelli saw words as tools, not as emotional outlets. He knew that long speeches rarely convince, but a well-placed sentence at the right moment can move entire structures. Speaking less is not a lack of content, it is precision. When you master strategic speech, you begin to control the rhythm of conversations. You do not answer everything, you do not over-explain, you do not defend yourself by reflex. This creates a space where the other exposes themselves, reveals priorities, and delivers valuable information without being pressured. The third skill is the most feared of all, emotional self-sufficiency. When you do not need approval, praise, or external validation, you become impossible to manipulate. Machiavelli understood that emotional dependence is a subtle form of servitude. Those who need too much yield too much. Those who seek constant recognition give away power without realizing it. Those who are internally self-sufficient, however, choose. They choose when to approach, when to withdraw, and when to remain silent. This inner freedom is frightening because it cannot be controlled. Emotional self-sufficiency does not mean indifference. It means not negotiating your inner stability in exchange for acceptance. You do not react to please, you do not explain to be understood, and you do not diminish yourself to maintain fragile bonds. Your presence stops begging and starts selecting. Together, these three skills create something rare. You do not become loud, but you become noticeable. You do not become aggressive, but you become respected. You do not become distant, but you begin to be treated with greater caution, because now there is structure behind the silence. Machiavelli would admire this combination because it dispenses with spectacle. There is no need for direct confrontations or public affirmations. Control manifests indirectly, almost invisibly, yet profoundly effectively. Those who understand the game do not need to announce that they are playing. Most people believe that power is about dominating others. Machiavelli knew that true power begins with self-mastery. When you control presence, words, and emotions, the environment begins to reorganize itself around you without you forcing anything. At this point, you stop chasing validation. You stop competing for attention. You stop reacting to minor provocations. Your energy concentrates on what is essential, and this concentration creates an aura of unpredictability that prevents direct attacks and reduces external interference. You do not need to be loved, nor feared. It is enough to be perceived as someone who cannot be easily moved, pressured, or read. This is the most uncomfortable position for those who try to control, manipulate, or test limits. When controlled presence, strategic speech, and emotional self-sufficiency align, something definitive happens. You no longer seek power, because you begin to emanate silent control, and it is precisely at this point that intelligence ceases to be mere understanding and begins to become a real, discrete, and profoundly transformative force. If one thing became clear throughout this video, it is that intelligence is not speed, eloquence, or force of reaction. Real intelligence is inner control. It is the ability to sustain silence when the world demands a response, to observe when everyone else exposes themselves, and to act only when the move has already been calculated. You saw that reacting to everything is the most common mistake, that observation is the silent turning point, and that structuring presence, speech, and emotion is what transforms perception into power. There is no spectacle in this, no announcement. There is method, and method, when well applied, alters destinies without ever raising suspicion. Being dangerously intelligent does not mean becoming someone feared for shouting or imposing force. It means becoming someone impossible to predict, manipulate, or pressure. Someone who does not explain themselves, does not beg for understanding, and does not offer their emotions as a bargaining currency. Most people will continue playing the game of reaction, justification, and excessive exposure. They will speak too much, feel too much, and act without realizing they are always one step behind. You now know the cost of this behavior and the value of silent mastery. This transformation does not happen all at once. It consolidates itself in small daily gestures, in sustained silence, in the response that never comes, in the observation that precedes the decision. Each time you choose lucidity over impulse, something within you grows stronger. This is not about withdrawing from the world, but about positioning yourself within it with clarity. It is not about coldness, but about autonomy. When you no longer need to prove anything, when you no longer depend on external validation, your presence changes, and the environment responds to it, even without understanding why. If this video made you notice patterns that previously went unnoticed, that is no coincidence. It is a sign that your mind has begun to operate on another level. A level where emotion becomes data, silence becomes a tool, and presence becomes influence. To seal this moment, leave the following phrase in the comments. I choose lucidity over reaction. Not as a request to the algorithm, but as a silent commitment to yourself. If this content expanded your perception, like it, subscribe, and remain attentive, because the most powerful intelligence is the one no one sees coming.